and hike. Maybe sit in my wee office and answer a question that I'm often asked. Probably the most common question I get about my videos, apart from some technical questions that is how do you film that? How do you get the camera back after walking so far away from it? So I think what I'll do is I'll see if we can find a couple of clips. I'll do a wee bit of an explanation. I have a feeling that I might have to film all this again because I think it's going to be too windy, but this might be the intro. Getting into a wee 5 or 10 minute video on how I film the long shots when I'm out and about in the hills. So let me get my coffee, finish off my hike, and get back indoors where it's warm and dry. Hey folks, it was wild out there today. I don't know if you heard anything of what I was saying. I was basically introducing this wee 10-minute video for you. I'm often asked how I shoot these long shots. Well, this is a wee video explaining how I do it. To be honest, it's not rocket science. I set the camera up and then I walk away from the camera and I have to turn around and run back and retrieve the camera. But there's a few tricks that I sometimes use to make it hopefully a wee bit more interesting for you guys. So I've uploaded 2 or 3 clips from old footage and I'm going to introduce a wee bit of dialogue, a wee bit of explanation of what I'm up to when I'm shooting these longer shots. So let me finish off editing this for you and then we'll roll this wee video. Hopefully you find it interesting. So setting up a shot like this is actually quite easy. All I have to do is to climb the slope the first time, set up the camera, frame the angles and the views that I want, and then go back down to a suitable start point and then reclimb the slope with the camera running. But watching me climb such a long slope is quite boring. So what I do is after I've shot the initial ascent, I go back down again and I'll shoot across the slope like this and I'll capture a few seconds, and that adds a little bit of interest. And once I've walked through the frame on this particular shot, I can go back to the original shot, which you can see coming in now, and continue the climb. So I've captured 2 pieces of footage there. This is the first piece and this is the second half of it, if you like. I've just clipped it and I've inserted the second piece of footage that I shot just to mix it up a little bit and make it a little bit more interesting. The biggest challenge really is to keep, when I'm filming on snow, is to keep my footprints out of the shot until I get the final take. So in this clip I've identified an ascent line that I quite like. There's good deep snow in the foreground, the ridge line is more or less in silhouette, and there's a good background to afford some feeling of scale. I also like filming at this angle where I'm pointing across the hill and slightly down because it gives me a reasonable width of frame to climb through, and that's important if I want to introduce some backing music to the clip. It's going to take me 2.5 minutes perhaps to climb from the bottom right of the frame, as you see it on your screen, to the top left, and that is enough time to introduce some music. However, one of the disadvantages of filming across the slope like this, especially when the camera is set quite far back, is the camera tends to flatten the slope a little bit. It makes it seem less steep than it actually is. So quite often if I'm filming across the slope like this, once I've identified a line that I like, I may film it and then come right round in behind the camera again and pick up the camera and then keep the camera more or less on the same contour on the slope, but just move forward by 200 or 300 meters, and you'll see that on the next clip that's coming in. So the camera is more or less on the same contour. I've just moved it a couple of 100 meters closer to the subject matter, if you consider me as a subject matter. And if you look very carefully at the background, you'll see that the background in this clip is the same as the background in the other clip. So by moving the camera closer and zooming in a little bit, what I do is I give a more realistic impression of the steepness of the slope. So this is some raw footage that I captured during my ascent of Hecla on South Uist last summer, where I really wanted to capture the essence of the mountain. This is the central ridge, and for me it's the finest feature on the hill. So the camera set up where it is shows that we're walking through big mountain terrain, but it doesn't take long for the viewer's interest to be lost. So to keep the viewer with you, almost in a literal sense, you have to have some close-ups. Now, it might seem that the easiest way to film the close-ups is to use a second camera, but in practice, the second camera quite often will get in the way of the first shot, so it doesn't really work, and usually it's better just to expend a little bit more energy going backwards and forwards and filming each shot as an individual. And certainly it's easier for editing purposes at the end once you've captured all the footage that you require. So what I wanted to achieve with this shot was to walk away into the distance, heading towards the skyline, heading onto the ridge, but I wanted to cut to close-up and then cut to another close-up and then perhaps even cut to a third close-up, all on different parts of that short journey between the camera and the ridge, and then finally end up with a long distance shot with me standing on the ridge. Once I've shot that clip, I can then retrace my steps all the way back down to the camera, and I can pack the camera up. So that's the long distance shot done. It's always worth having a quick review of that before you pack the camera up, however, because all the other shots really tie in to that initial shot. I should say there's a few problems inherent in shooting in this way in Scotland, not in the least the weather. So overall, I guess it took around an hour to shoot this sequence, and an hour can bring about quite significant changes in the weather, especially in the cloud. So what I'm trying to do is to give the viewer the impression that they're hiking with me across this terrain. But if the weather changes too significantly, for example, if it goes from complete cloud cover to partial cloud cover or even to blue skies in the period that you're filming this, then you lose the continuity. It doesn't look like it's a single journey from camera to ridge with close-ups embedded in it. It just looks like a whole sequence of different clips that have been stitched together, which is really what I'm trying to avoid. In this particular case, I don't think I succeeded because the weather was against me and the cloud broke, and therefore there was lighter sky during some of the clips and darker sky during others. So if you look out for that at the end of this little dialogue, I'll show you the actual finished product after I had edited it. You'll be able to see what I'm talking about. This next wee sequence of clips was filmed when I was crossing the Bray and Ba on South Harris using my packraft. The first two clips were filmed with the same camera, different angles and different zoom lengths on the lens, but the third clip just doesn't work at all because partly it was on a different camera, but mostly because the weather changed and the water turned from that grey blue to a more vivid blue as we got a blink of sunshine. So despite all the effort that went into it, I couldn't really stitch these three clips together. So I was able to film the crossing of the Bray and Ba, crossing the lochs and the lochans from the land, setting up the tripod on a wee promontory here and there and being able to film out across the water. But about this time last year I was camping on Loch Tay on an island, and my closing scene was me paddling off away down the loch a considerable distance away from the camera, and the camera seemed to be sitting out in the middle of the water. And folk have wondered how I managed to film that. Well, the truth is I know Loch Tay very well. I've swam in it, I've paddled it many's a time, and I know where the sandbars are. So the camera was actually set up in the loch. I was able to locate one of the sandbars, and then just working from the boat, I got the tripod set up with the camera on top of it. I anchored or weighed down the tripod using a bag such as this one underneath, hanging underneath, to stop the camera and tripod taking a tumble and killing my camera in the water. But it also serves the purpose of allowing me to retrieve the camera. The camera is only just a wee bit above water. It's a great expanse. I'm paddling a considerable distance away, and so when I turn round to head back and get the camera, it can be quite difficult to find it. It can be difficult to find it in the hills, but it's even harder if you set it up on water. So I had a bag like that hanging from it. I paddled it way down, and in my head as I was paddling away, I obviously knew that I had to turn around and go back and retrieve the camera at some point, but I'm going through a piece of music in my mind to try and get adequate distance between me and the camera so that I can insert that clip, so that I can have the closing sequence to the wee movie that I particularly was aiming for. Shall I run that and let you have a look at it again? Let's do that. So there you go, folks. There's a wee insight into some of the techniques that I use when I'm out and about filming. I hope you found this wee video interesting. If you're a regular viewer but you haven't hit the subscription button, then please do so if you don't mind. I'd really appreciate that. And I greatly appreciate all the views and comments that I get. So thanks for supporting the channel, folks. I wish I could get out and about a little bit further afield to capture some more interesting content for you, but we're still being encouraged to stay at home and stay local. So I'll get out with the camera again probably in the next few days, to be honest, but I'm busy with the garden. So this is a new house. For the regular viewers, you'll know that I moved house at the back end of last year, and I've been working away on getting the house sorted out and getting my gear room in order, and really what I want to be able to do is to hit the ground running once we're released and able to travel a little bit further afield. But the garden is a priority. I'm keen on my garden and I've got a lot of work to do, so I've been working away. I've got all the hard landscaping done, I've got all the slabs down, and probably at the beginning of next month I'm going to build a shed, a little workshop and a tool store. And I'm opening up borders. I've got a lot of my plants in a holding plot in the city of Edinburgh actually, and I need to go and retrieve them at some point. I reckon that I need probably in the region of about 45 to 50 square metres of border to house everything, so I've been double digging in between my frequent walks along the coast and out into the woods. So I'm pretty busy just now. I've got a lot to do, but I will try and keep the channel ticking over with a wee video here and there of some local activity. The snow on the local hills is going to be good just now, but also the weather forecast for this weekend is for blue sky, so I think the hills will just be too busy. It's not really my cup of tea, to be honest, sharing the hills with so many people. I know that sounds a wee bit antisocial, but it is what it is. And also, it's just extremely difficult filming if there's too many people around. I like my solitude, and it makes it less intrusive for others when I've got the camera with me. So, anyhow, blithering on again, folks. Let me get this video finished and posted, and then I can sit back and see what your comments are. So stay safe, folks. I'll keep in touch, and I'll get back to you soon. Bye for now. Exhausted. Up and down, up and down, up and down. It's grand to be out and about, folks.